The arrivals board flickered above her, glowing amber against the steel-cold light of the airport. Gate B6. Delayed. Again. Mira stood still among the flood of travelers, her small suitcase resting upright beside her, its handle worn, leather faded where fingers had gripped too tightly too many times. In her right hand, she clutched a bouquet of lilies, white, fragrant, trembling ever so slightly in the breeze from the automatic doors. She wasn't here to welcome anyone. She just wanted to see. Across the terminal, her eyes settled on a woman. Blonde, tall. Laughing into her phone with the kind of careless intimacy Mira had once reserved for someone who no longer deserved it. The woman wore red heels. The kind Mira used to wear, before comfort started to feel like compromise. The woman walked past, brushing Myra's shoulder lightly, unaware, unfazed. The scent of the lilies mixed with the woman's perfume, and for a second, Mira couldn't breathe. She tightened her grip. One of the stems snapped under her fingers. The flowers were fresh. Always were. Every day for 187 days, they had arrived at her doorstep, sometimes with a note, sometimes not. Sometimes roses, sometimes tulips. But never lilies. Today she brought those herself. Because she finally knew. I love you. That's what the last card said. The handwriting was almost too neat. Too practiced. She had compared it to another card she found by accident, tucked into the trash at his office beneath a half-eaten sandwich and a glossy bag from a jewelry store. The same words. The same script. But the name wasn't hers. Mira blinked away the memory. Her eyes flicked toward the terminal doors. A gust of wind rustled the red scarf around her neck. It was thin, silken. A gift. She didn't wear it because it was beautiful. She wore it because it was the last thing he gave her that hadn't yet lied. The scarf clung to her throat now like a question left unanswered. Her phone buzzed. A message. From him. Boarding soon. Can't wait to see you. Did you get the flowers? She didn't reply. Instead, she turned. Slowly. Her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. Not hurried. Not running. Just, moving. Behind her, the lilies dropped, one by one, across the tile. A trail. A quiet protest. A goodbye no one would understand at first. The woman in red heels was gone. But Mira? She had just arrived. Mira sat on a bench near the far end of the terminal, her scarf pulled tighter now, not against the cold, but against the quiet unraveling inside her. She watched a little girl run into her father's arms. He spun her, kissed her forehead, and laughed like joy belonged in the air. A woman stood behind them, her hands full of bags, her smile tired but full. Mira looked away. Her own arms were empty. The lilies were gone. Left behind on the floor like her carefully constructed denial. She curled her fingers into the frayed handle of the suitcase, the one she'd had since college. Her father once said, "Buy things that last longer than your emotions." He had been the kind of man who measured love in repairs, not gifts. The suitcase still worked. Unlike her marriage. "You're overthinking it, Mira." That's what she'd told herself when she first saw the duplicate bouquet posted on social media. Same flowers, different hands. Maybe a coincidence. Maybe not. She had scrolled past it. Then circled back. Again. And again. Her husband's secretary, Lana. The girl who always wore red lipstick and called everyone "hun" in meetings. The one who laughed too easily at jokes Mira had heard before they were recycled for charm. One post had tagged a restaurant. Mira remembered the reservation. He was supposed to be in Boston that night. Business dinner, he'd said. She had eaten leftovers alone, curled up in that same scarf, thinking maybe, just maybe, she'd forgotten how to be exciting. A man sat on the opposite bench now. Not close. Not far. Quiet. His coat was wrinkled, his shoes dusty. But his eyes met hers once, briefly, before lowering again. Mira didn't flinch. She reached into the outer pocket of her suitcase and pulled out a receipt. The florist's name. She had called them yesterday. Asked who placed the order. The man had hesitated. She remembered his voice. They were ordered together. "Ma'am, are you sure?" She was. Now, she folded the receipt into a small square and tucked it into her boot. Just in case. A family passed by, their laughter leaving a faint echo behind them. She felt it tug at something in her chest. Not envy. Not quite. The man across from her stood suddenly, adjusting his bag. He looked like he was about to speak, then stopped. His pause felt deliberate. Mira tilted her head slightly, questioning, but not with words. He gave a confused half-smile. The kind people wear when they don't know how to say, "I've seen you before." Pain carved its initials into your face. Her hand hovered over the suitcase handle again. She didn't know whether to stand, or stay. And in that flicker of indecision, something inside her shifted. Rain had started, not loud, not urgent. Just the soft kind that blurred the world through glass and made everything look a little more honest. Mira pressed her fingers against the window near Gate B10, watching the sky bleed gray over the runways. The scarf at her neck was damp now, clinging to her skin like memory. The man from earlier stood near the vending machine, back slightly hunched, a hand deep in his coat pocket. Not fumbling, searching. His bag was old canvas, stitched at the corners where seams had given out. His left shoe had a scrape near the toe, like it had been dragged across gravel too many times. He finally pulled out a wallet. A photo slipped loose. He caught it mid-air. Mira couldn't see it clearly, but something about the way he stared at it made her forget her own breath. He sat down again, not across from her this time, but diagonally, like he wasn't sure if they were part of the same silence or two separate ones stitched too close. He didn't speak. Neither did she. You ever sit next to someone who already knows what you've lost? The thought surfaced, uninvited. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe the way the photo disappeared back into his wallet like it hurt. She looked away first. Her phone buzzed again. Final boarding. "I'm here. I'll find you." She didn't move. He was here. The man who sent her flowers, and lies. Whose hands held other truths, other women. Whose voice could still make her second-guess herself. Mira closed her eyes, and for a moment, she imagined standing face-to-face with him. Would he look guilty? Or would he do what he always did, tilt his head, smile softly, and make her feel like the storm? Behind her, the man with the photo sipped from a paper cup. Coffee. Black. Shaky hands. His eyes met hers again, softer this time. Not curious. Just familiar. He wasn't following her. She was sure of that now. But something about his presence felt unnervingly timed. Maybe it was his quiet. The kind that doesn't demand anything from you but still makes you answer questions out loud. Mira stood. Her suitcase handle clicked as she pulled it up. Her scarf brushed her lips, faintly scented with forgotten perfume. He looked up. As if to ask something. She hesitated. Not because she didn't know what to say. But because part of her wanted to ask him first, "Why are you running?" She didn't. She turned toward the gate. But her steps didn't echo like they used to. And somewhere behind her, someone didn't call her name. Mira stood at the edge of the boarding tunnel, one hand gripping the strap of her suitcase, the other clutching her phone. Her heart felt loud, each beat like a knock against a locked door. Gate B10 was calling final passengers. The voice over the speakers was too calm for what she was feeling. She could go. Walk straight onto the plane. Let her silence scream louder than any confrontation. And maybe that would be enough. She took one step forward. Then stopped. Turned. Not because she changed her mind, but because her heart whispered, one last look. Her eyes searched through the blur of movement, the dull hum of rolling bags and tired parents and impatient glances. She almost didn't see him. But then, there he was. The man with the worn coat. Still seated. Still watching. And in his hand, her scarf. It must have slipped when she stood. But now, in his lap, it looked different. Folded. Respected. Not claimed. He didn't wave. Didn't call after her. Just held it like it wasn't fabric, but a story. Mira took a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Behind her, a woman in a sharp suit whispered to her partner, just loud enough, "You'd think people like that would move faster." She's clearly not sure. Not sure. Was that what this was? Indecision? Or just grief in motion? The man with the scarf finally stood. He stepped forward slowly and offered it to her, arm extended, not intruding, just there. Something about the way he held it made her throat tighten. She didn't take it yet. He spoke, barely above the storm still murmuring outside the windows. Some people carry more than just bags, they carry silence. His voice wasn't smooth. It cracked slightly, like someone who hadn't spoken for a while, or who'd said too much once and never recovered. Mira met his eyes. There was no pity in them. No agenda. Only a mirror. She took the scarf, fingers brushing his for half a second longer than necessary. It was still warm. She didn't ask who was in the photo. He didn't ask where she was going. And in that space between what could be said and what should be left untouched, something real hovered. Not love. Not fate. Just recognition. A gate agent called again. Louder. Her plane was about to leave. Mira stepped back, scarf pressed to her chest like armor. Then paused. One more breath. One more second of maybe. And then, she turned toward the tunnel. But didn't walk through. Not yet. The scarf still smelled like the first hotel she and her husband stayed in after the wedding, rose water and clean linen. But now, against her chest, it felt heavier. Not from fabric. From history. Mira stood near the glass again, her plane already closed for boarding. She should have moved, should have chosen something, revenge or peace, grief or closure. But she hadn't. Instead, she watched the man with the photo approach a coffee kiosk near gate B12. She followed without thinking, like footsteps had their own will now. When she reached him, he was speaking to the barista, his tone quiet, respectful. He handed over a card to pay, and for the first time, Mira saw his full name flash on the screen. C. Thorne. Her breath caught. She'd seen that name just yesterday. On the company letterhead for Thorne and Partners. The firm where she'd submitted her freelance portfolio. "They'll never choose someone like me," she had muttered, half laughing, clicking submit anyway. But this wasn't just someone who might choose her. This was the choice. As if sensing her shift, he turned slowly. Their eyes met again. And suddenly, the scarf in her hand wasn't just hers. She remembered the photo now, just enough of it to feel the chill. A girl, maybe 7 or 8. Wrapped in a red scarf just like this one, grinning in a winter park. Mira's mind spun. Some people carry more than just bags, he had said. Now she understood. He wasn't just a stranger with kind eyes and a lonely bench. He was a man stitched together by loss, quietly watching the world move on without his daughter. And maybe that's why he'd noticed her. Because sometimes broken things recognize their own. Mira backed away. The scarf nearly slipped again. Her phone buzzed. Another message from her husband. I'm at gate B6. Where are you? The loop was closing. The time for indecision dissolving. She walked. Fast. Not toward him, not away from him, but through something. Down a hallway. Left at the escalators. Toward the business lounge. She stopped at the front desk, her voice almost foreign in her mouth. Excuse me, is Mr. Thorne still inside? The receptionist nodded. Would you like me to tell him you're here? Mira swallowed hard. No. Just. I'll wait. Her hand tightened around the scarf, no longer a reminder of her husband's last gift, but now a thread connecting two quiet losses. She stepped inside the lounge. Not for comfort, but for a conversation that would change everything. The business lounge was quieter than the rest of the airport, dimly lit, with the kind of hush that asked for secrets. Mira sat on the edge of a leather chair, the red scarf folded neatly in her lap now, like a truce offering. Across the room, Mr. Thorne, or C. Thorne, as the world knew him, stood with his back to her, watching the rain streak the window. His coffee had gone cold. You stayed, he said, still facing the glass. I didn't come to ask for a job, she answered softly. I came because I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. That carrying grief doesn't mean you're lost. He turned slowly. No surprise in his expression. Just that same quiet understanding, like he'd already walked this hallway in her shoes. I sent flowers for 2 years after she died, he said. Every week. Same florist. Same message. I didn't want to let go. And then one day, the delivery boy asked who they were really for. I didn't have an answer. He paused. That's when I stopped. The scarf in her lap burned against her fingers now. I thought they meant something, she whispered. The flowers I got. I thought he was trying. Loving me again. Mr. Thorne looked at her carefully. Some men give to distract. Some to confess. And some, just out of habit. Her hands trembled. But not from weakness. From restraint. I was going to confront him. My husband. He's in the terminal right now. Her voice broke. But I don't want to be the woman who begs to be chosen. You're not, he said. She reached out and held the scarf between them. I think this was hers. His eyes didn't fill. But his chest rose once, sharply. He stepped forward, and for the first time, touched the scarf. Then gently pushed it back toward her. It was. But it looks better on someone learning how to let go. Her throat tightened. I sent in my portfolio last week, she said. Under a different name. Thought maybe it'd be easier to pretend to be someone else. I saw it. He nodded. That's why I came today. Not for a flight. For that scarf. For you. Her breath caught. Why? Because you reminded me, he said, what it's like to survive without bitterness. A hush fell between them. Then, her phone buzzed one last time. She silenced it without looking. And finally, she stood. Outside, gate B6 was still blinking. Still waiting. But not for her. Mira walked out of the lounge, leaving the scarf gently draped on the empty chair, its journey complete. As she passed the crowded terminal, someone watched her. Maybe him. Maybe no one. It didn't matter. She was no longer waiting to be chosen. she disappeared into the soft hum of departures. And somewhere between gate signs and unfinished goodbyes, the world whispered, not every stranger you help is meant to stay, but some leave you changed forever. Weeks later, the city was quieter. Or maybe Mira had just learned to hear it differently. She walked along the edge of a small park not far from her apartment, her fingers trailing the rusted iron fence as fallen leaves gathered like stories waiting to be read. The air carried the first whisper of autumn, cool and weightless, like the hush after a storm that never fully spoke. No suitcase in hand now. No scarf wrapped tight at her throat. She wasn't hiding anymore. Inside her apartment, the red scarf rested in the top drawer of her writing desk, folded neatly beneath a stack of manuscript pages she hadn't dared to edit yet. The scarf wasn't something to wear now. It was a bookmark, soft and stubborn, marking where she stopped letting someone else write her ending. The flowers had stopped arriving. She had cancelled the subscription herself, even before she'd changed the locks. Even before the final conversation with her husband that wasn't really a conversation, just a realization spoken out loud. Sometimes love is not romance, it's recognition. He didn't understand. He only blinked, then blamed her for reading too much into things again. But Mira didn't argue. She just stood there, hands still, eyes calm. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming her voice. Now, she walked alone, but not lonely. She'd been hired freelance at a small editorial firm. Mr. Thorne hadn't intervened or reached out since that day. But a recommendation had quietly appeared in her inbox. One line, unsigned, some people carry silence. She carried through it. She smiled at that sometimes. Not because she needed praise, but because she'd earned something that couldn't be taken, dignity in the aftermath. Near the park bench where she used to sit with her coffee, a girl now waited with her own suitcase, lips tight, scarf wrapped too tightly around her neck. Mira watched for a second. Then moved on. She didn't stop to offer advice. She knew now, every unraveling must be felt in silence before strength can bloom. Above her, a bird took flight. No one noticed. But Mira did. The kind of noticing that only comes after you've watched something fall, and still chose to rise. The world didn't need to hear her story. But she had written it. Line by line. Breath by breath. And somewhere between what hurt and what healed, Mira learned the truest kind of freedom isn't forgetting, it's forgiving the version of yourself who stayed too long.